on paper right now, one of the best games we have left this season. That's probably not saying a lot. They're both teams that people think are good, but I think part of it is you don't get this game a lot, and that's part of why it's so attractive. The Mike McDaniel element, the Tyreek, the Tua, they've got stars, the uniforms. Like I think if you're an 8-year-old kid right now, I don't know for anybody out there watching and listening who has an 8-year-old kid, I'd be curious who are your kids' favorite teams? Like who do kids think are cool right now? To me, they obviously Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, those guys are high on the list. I think the Dolphins would be kind of on my list if I was an 8-year-old kid right now. I just think they're cool. They're fun. The unis are cool. They're always playing the sun. This is an awesome game.
It'd be an easy. I mean, it'd be once they got Tyreek, it'd be a fun team to be in Madden, which I would say has a huge impact on who you like.
Why Lamar Jackson has such a big.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson and Mahomes have to be the number one picks for kids playing Madden. I would imagine Miami is flown up there. For as fun as the Niners defense is, like, are they your number one pick and taking a Madden team? That's probably not. You're right. This game is fantastic, and it's a little bit like oil and water, right? Two opposite things. Like their offense is awesome. This defense is awesome. In theory, the Niners offense should be sweet, but it's like they struggle to score points, for a team that's
scored 13 last week.
Yeah. Now, if you watch Kyle in the locker room, he's like, I told you guys this was coming. And Jimmy's like, I knew this type game was coming. It's like, guys, you guys can't score in the red zone.
You're allowed to score more than what you predicted.
Yeah. I mean, you were in position to score more points. So, yes, it was a physical game. Jimmy was getting peppered, but
the Saints don't suck on defense, in fairness.
No, and they got guys back. They were bringing it. But you could have scored and won the game 21-0. Or 20-0. So you weren't playing the 85 Bears and just like, we knew this was going to be Ray Lewis. It's like, come on, guys.
Andy Dalton also hit a guy in the face in the end zone, Juwan Johnson, and then they had a fumble at the 1-yard line. So
yeah, and they also Olave fumbled the ball. Where was he? Like the 10? I mean, that was pretty far down there. So they had their moments. You never, as Pat Hill once said, you never apologize for winning. That was more like when Fresno State would beat New Mexico by 4. So in the NFL, you covered, like we said on Sunday night, you cover anyone when you're an 8-point home favorite. That's a big, huge line in the NFL.
Yeah.
And like we said on Sunday, it's weird because no one's super, super happy after this win, even though you're kind of happy, but it wasn't like pumping your chest out, walking to work. Like, you see that 33-0 beat down? I was like, God, that thing was a little closer than it should have been. But this team's a little bit different animal. Obviously, the 49ers got some pretty bad injury news. The Dolphins do too. I mean, they're banged up. Their defense is pretty bad, and they're just not very physical on defense. But that fucking offense, holy cannoli. It's not even just people. Mike McDaniel, I'm sure we'll talk about him today. Their offense doesn't look like they play like a more traditional passing offense, don't they? Like it's just kind of dropping back and let Tua. Kind of feels like Tua, their offense that he excelled at in Alabama. He's just dropping back and pushing the ball down the field. Their offense does not parallel what I've witnessed when Mike and Kyle were together, right, in their quote-unquote heyday in 19 and at moments last year.
Yeah, the irony is he's played one fewer game than Jimmy, and Jimmy has 20 more pass attempts. So they're probably around the same number of pass attempts per game. He's got a couple hundred more yards than
missed some, but he died on the field.
Yeah, he's played in 9, and Jimmy's played in 10.
He got knocked out of the one game where his neck. I guess they let him come back at halftime, right?
He got bent over last week by the Texans too. He gets hit.
Well, what's weird, I think sometimes, like if you just saw him play, like, oh, this little left-hander, I bet he can move. He's not really a mover. He's not a runner. Like Andy Dalton turns out still, as an older age, pretty good athlete. I would say he's a much better athlete than Tua.
Well,
Tua's not a threat to run.
I wasn't really even watching Andy like that. And my dad last night was like, the redheaded quarterback from the Saints, he was on the Bengals, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, how old is he? Because he actually moves pretty well. I said, God, I think you're right. He in hindsight, I wasn't even watching him that way, But Tua does, I think, kind of feel the pocket pretty well.
But Andy's a threat to like take off for 7-8 yards, right? Yeah.
They're down to Teron Armstead, Austin Jackson was already hurt. Teron Armstead got hurt last week. The Texans are just a tough barometer, but
Yeah, I'll be honest. I watched a little bit this morning. I didn't make it past halftime. Like the
You
game
didn't-
was, they were up 27-0, guy. I was like, this thing's a joke.
well, you and I didn't have to watch the Texan game to know that this game just has the potential to be really fun, to be exciting. The Dolphins can absolutely beat the Niners.
They essentially got 2 defensive touchdowns in that game. I know they
Yeah.
didn't actually score defensive touchdowns. It was like the one fumble.
One at like the 4-yard line.
Yeah, and the one fumble that led to that made it 27. A dude on the Texans might have died. He was like tackled by 2 guys, and this guy came. I don't know how they didn't go, and the ball just pops up. I'm like, is that guy alive?
We'll spare everybody if you haven't watched the game the details. Kyle
Don't need
Allen
to.
started that game.
Yeah, don't waste your time.
But one thing is interesting. Like Tua's only thrown 3 picks this year against 16 touchdowns, 19 touchdowns,
19
3 picks.
touchdowns, 70% completion percentage.
Do whatever you want with it. He's PFF's #1 graded passer.
His numbers are pretty awesome.
When you watch him, let's see, what is his turnover worthy play percentage, John, is 10th in the league, 3.8%. He has one thing you like about watching too is he plays with like guts. But he makes some throws. He's a little gutsier than his arm strength, Like he will put the ball out there and it might go to Tyreek and it might go for 80, or it might go to Jalen Waddle, it might go for 80. But Fred Warner might get a hand on a ball. Like there's going to be a tip ball over the middle in this game for the Niners defense. And this is the game where I think you have to make that play against the Dolphins. If Tua gives you one, you have to make the play. Because this is not, you're not going to be able to get away with some of the stuff they got away with against New Orleans.
Well, think about who his guy was, and basically his mentor, his first year was we lose Haberman.
Huh?
He's back. Think about it. The guy that was his mentor his first year was Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now he ended up kind of, supplanting him, and kind of they went back and forth. But I would say Ryan Fitzpatrick has hung his hat historically on playing like a Mahomes Favre when it's like you got no business. But in Tua, to me, when I watched Tua, and I watched a little bit of the Browns game too, and I've watched them play a decent amount this year. When he's in rhythm and rolling, it looks, just because the 2 wide receivers are so good and their tight ends aren't bad, like their offense from a passing game standpoint looks pretty potent. Now their 2 wide receivers guy are going to be a problem. But like you said, he will put the ball up there. But I think a lot of times those 2 guys are getting pretty wide open. Obviously, Tyreek has been getting open for 7-8 years. Do you know that Jalen Waddle broke the rookie reception record last year, breaking Anquan Bolden? 104 catches last year as a rookie. It's an NFL record. And this year he's on pace for, I would say, right around the same. So like back-to-back years. He has 160 catches in 16 games, career games. Like that's, pretty good.
And Tyreek leads the league in catches.
Who does?
Tyreek Hill leads the league in catches, leads the league in yards.
So
he's got 87 catches, John.
I kind of like the Niners matching up better against bigger wide receivers than these little elite speed guys.
Yeah, that's a good call.
I guess, excuse me, 20. He's got 26 career games. I was like, that doesn't add up because he played 26 career games, about 160 catches. I think Jalen Waddle is, I guess if you play fantasy, you would know him. But I wonder if you're a Niner fan, you don't watch that much Miami Dolphins. Like, he is a really, really good player. Like, he's going to go to Pro Bowls, which makes sense, right? This is a blue chip guy that went to Alabama. Like, Tyreek has been in our vernacular, in our consciousness, because he's been on the best team for a long time. And he's been arguably their second best player. Even though you could argue that Kelsey, who, as you text me, no one scores more touchdowns, running at like 78%. And even Collinsworth on the broadcast, or were they on Sunday Night Football?
Yeah.
Was like, he doesn't look like he's running that fast, but he actually is. No, he actually does not look like he's running fast.
Kelsey has this thing where he just knows exactly, even though he's 36 yards out, he knows exactly how much effort it's going to take to get to the goal line. And there's always some guy trying to tackle him at the goal line. He always lines it up that way. Or or sometimes he's just completely untouched. But in that game, he scored a touchdown running at 100%. He was definitely running at 80%.
Well, does any guy score a touchdown more often where he's not the fastest guy, like the guys trying to tackle him are way faster, yet he hits like multiple angles, like a triangle, like a half triangle, where he goes one way and then he knows when he cuts it this way, you're going to go that way, and it's like they barely touch his jersey. It's like, how's that possible? And yeah, but back to the Dolphins. I mean, they just those two wide receivers. Tua doesn't scare me, but they do. But I do think the 49ers should be able to get after their ass up front. And Tiger Woods turns out also has plantar fasciitis. It looks like Eric Armstead's going to practice this week. I think
they could use him in this game.
Barros wrote that he had a really good week last week. I guess Kyle said on the they did a conference call yesterday that they thought about it last week and this week, like they feel pretty bullish. Now I'll believe it when I see it. Not that he's not eventually going to come back, but like when he actually plays, we'll have to see if he's like full go in practice. But they could really, you would think, once Kinlaw eligible to come off, maybe we just chalk him up as bye-bye. But
I think Armstead would be really valuable in this game, in part because just of how big, like putting that size in front of Tua, I think would be a useful thing. By the way, just looking at some of the numbers, they are first and fifth in yards, Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. Tyreek has twice as many yards as Brandon Ayuk has receiving this year. Jalen Waddle has he's 37 yards away from 1,000. So this week they could actually end up with two 1,000-yard receivers.
I mean, are these guys going to end up, if Tyreek gets around 2 and Jalen gets around 14, 15? I mean, two guys get amassing 3,500 yards.
Yeah, I mean that's the way it's trending right now.
Well, you better slow them down this week. Now, one thing the Niners have done, right? They have given up pass plays. They just haven't allowed you to score.
Yeah, I mean, I also think it's kind of a week for the old 8-minute drive 49ers. Run the ball. Like, they got to run the ball this week, right?
With
Buck Mason, McCaffrey, hopefully. We'll get to that. But
Coleman gets 27 carries.
Yeah. Because that's not, to me, that creates some problems for Miami. Less possessions is good for this game. They're really good. They're really fun. Tua is.
I would say Miami has one of the more interesting Decembers coming up. Niners, Bills, Patriots, Chargers are four.
Niners, Bills, Patriots, Chargers.
That might not be the exact order of the games, but they play all these teams over the next month to end the season. Like, those are, like, you talk about all, like, the Niners and the Dolphins are the best game this week. And I would say you could argue Chiefs and Bengals is every bit it's equal, right? Because you would say the Chiefs are probably the favorite to win the Super Bowl, and the Bengals, I mean, are kind of coming right now. But I mean, those are two fantastic games. It feels a little different, right, when it's an NFC-AFC matchup than when it's just two NFC teams or two AFC teams, right?
Yeah.
Like if it was Niners-Vikings, it just feels a little bit different because you could get the game again. That's what's kind of cool about the one-off, like, Chiefs-Cowboys or Niners-Dolphins. It's just it feels kind of special because the likelihood that
it does.
The chances that both the teams late in the season are both going to make Super Bowls is going to be very, very difficult. And you would say that in a weird way, the Niners would be more likely, but the Dolphins are in first place in the AFC East. Like, they do have the tiebreaker because, like, the Niners beating Seattle, like, they have beat the Bills. Now, the Niners have a better record in Seattle, but did you know that? Like, I didn't quite realize that till I just looked at I just clicked standings. I was like, they technically are in first place.
And that could change in the AFC right now.
Now, that could change right by, I mean, shit.
Tennessee wins, they lose.
Well, I mean, what if Bills, the Bills win Thursday night and all of a sudden there's pressure on Miami just to hold serve?
Oh, you're talking about just in the East. Yeah. Here's their schedule, by the way. 3 straight road games starting this week. Niners, Chargers, Bills. Then they play Green Bay at home. Then they go to New England. Then they finish with the Jets at home.
That's, obviously the Packers suck, but if Rodgers plays, it's never just an easy game.
That's a real New England. It's not.
That's a really difficult schedule, is it not?
4 road games and 1 in New England, 1 in Buffalo.
I saw a stat today on the interweb that Justin Herbert has played a total of 25 snaps with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen on the field at the same time.
Wow.
Not a
think
big Brandon Staley guy, but if neither one of those guys ever got hurt, the Chargers would be better.
Marty says on the stream, what if Saleh versus McDaniel week 18 is for the division? Not out of the realm. I mean, the Jets are 7-4. The Dolphins are 8-3.
Do you see the Dolphins going to Buffalo and winning that game?
No. But the Dolphins play some – the Dolphins – I'd have to look. I mean, didn't they play a good game against – maybe it was the home game against the Bills last year.
Well, they won.
The home game?
The Dolphins beat the Bills earlier this season.
Yeah, but didn't they play a game last year that was kind of crazy? Was it in Buffalo or was it at home? I thought the last game of the season was in bad weather conditions and Tua was pretty terrible, and they got destroyed. So they got their ass kicked by Buffalo in the first time around. They beat them twice. The second time was in October. So
do you have their 2021 schedule up?
Yeah.
What was the Week 18 finals? Who'd they play and what was the score?
They played the Patriots and they won.
Oh.
Well, because didn't they beat the Patriots like...
Oh, yeah. The Dolphins last year started like 1-7, right? And that's when they stormed back and they ended up going 9-8.
2020, they got beat 56-26 at Buffalo week 18.
Yeah, they had a chance to make the playoffs because they won 10 games that year.
Yeah, they were good. Only 10-6. Damn.
I get my Tua years mixed up. In fairness, adding Tyreek is a huge new element, right, to their squad. They also traded a first-round pick midseason for Bradley Chubb, which I texted a buddy on the Chiefs when that happened. I'm like, is Bradley Chubb like that guy? And you're like, I wouldn't put him in the tier of. Now, you would argue.
True Shanahan disciple, John.
The type tier of guy, true. Those guys are never available pass rushers, right? And even if Khalil Mack was, somehow the Raiders did trade him for pick 19 and pick 22, it turns out. See, part of when you do those trades, you need one of the years to give you back like a top 7 pick.